Conversation 1. Carpentry.
Jim, what are you doing in there? You're making a terrible noise.
I'm mending the larder shelf. You asked me to do it this morning. You know it's always falling down.
Can't you leave it till later? I'm trying to listen to the radio.
I won't be a moment now. I'm just hammering in the last nail. Are you listening to the Elgar concert?
No, that's later. It's Viewpoint now. Carol Reed is talking about the Polish cinema. Hello, Maggie Brown speaking. Oh, hello, Jane. Can you speak a little louder? Jim is hammering away in the larder and I can't hear you. I'm glad you rang, Jane. Are you doing anything this evening? Good. Then come and keep me company.
Who are you talking to, Maggie?
It's Jane. She's coming round this evening. Yes, I'll be alone, Jane. Jim is going to his evening class tonight. He's taking a course in carpentry. He's always taking bits of furniture to pieces nowadays and trying to put them together again. Well, see you at 7 then. Bye, Jane.
There. That's the shelf seen to. You see, this carpentry course is proving very useful after all. I say, Maggie, are we having supper soon? I must leave about 7.
I'm just putting the kettle on. What about scrambled eggs on toast?
Sounds fine.
Where are the eggs, Jim? You've moved everything in the larder and I can't find them.
I think I put them on the shelf. Good heavens! What's happening in there?
Just the shelf again. And all the eggs as well this time. The carpentry course is proving very useful, isn't it?
What are you doing in there, Jim? You're making a terrible noise. I'm mending the larder shelf. I'm just hammering in the last nail. This shelf is always falling down. Jim is always taking bits of furniture to pieces. He is always trying to put them together again. Are you doing anything this evening, Jane? Jim is going to his carpentry class. Conversation 2. Jane and Maggie have a chat.
Come in, Jane. We're just finishing supper. You'll have a cup of coffee, won't you?
Thanks, Maggie.
Well, I must be leaving now or I'll be late for my class. Goodbye, Jane. Sorry I can't stay and talk to you.
Goodbye, Jim.
Come and sit down by the fire, Jane, and tell me all about your new job. It's with a travel agency, isn't it?
Yes, I do our Austrian correspondence.
Is your German still good enough? Or do you write your letters in English?
I can just about manage with my German, and I'm learning Russian, you know.
Russian? Why?
We arrange tours in Eastern Europe as well. I go to evening classes twice a week, and I'm getting on quite well. Why don't you come along, Maggie? You'd enjoy it. I remember you used to be very good at languages at school.
Oh, I'm far too tired in the evenings. After supper, I sit down with a book or listen to the radio. You're much more energetic than I am.
I enjoy the classes, but I must say they are tiring. It's a good thing I don't have to catch that 8 o'clock train these days.
What time do you start work then?
9:30. I usually catch the 8:55. Sometimes Robert gives me a lift on his scooter.
Who's Robert?
Oh, he's just someone I met in my Russian class. He lives just round the corner from me.
And he owns a scooter and takes you to work on it. That's a good beginning.
A good beginning for what, Maggie? Don't start jumping to conclusions. You're just friends.
And what does he do for a living, this Robert?
He works on the Daily Sentinel as a reporter. This week, he's covering the Trade Union Congress in Blackpool.
And why is he learning Russian?
He wants to go to Russia this summer, if he can.
Well, I can see you're going to make excellent progress in your Russian classes with such interesting company. Are you learning to ride a scooter as well?
Don't be silly, Maggie.
I go to evening classes twice a week. Why don't you come along with me, Maggie?
What time do you start work, Jane?
9:30. I usually catch the 8:55 train. He lives just round the corner.
What does he do for a living?
He works on the Daily Sentinel as a reporter. He wants to go to Russia this summer.
Conversation 3. Jim and Maggie are going away for the week.
Have you packed everything yet, Maggie? We must hurry if we don't want to miss the train.
Yes, everything's ready. But I haven't had time to collect your coat from the cleaners. We'll have to pick it up on the way to the station.
You haven't forgotten my razor?
No, I haven't. But I'm sure you've forgotten to buy new blades for it.
Oh, dash it. So I have. Never mind. We can buy some at the station kiosk. Have you telephoned for the taxi yet?
Yes, it should be here any moment now.
Goodness. How I'm looking forward to this week away. What a hectic term it's been. I haven't had time to breathe. That must be the taxi. All ready to leave, Maggie?
Just a minute. Let's make sure we haven't forgotten anything. Have you cancelled the newspaper?
Yes, I did that this morning.
Have you put out the note I gave you for the milkman?
Yes. Yes, of course I have.
You've bolted all the windows, haven't you, and locked the back door?
Good heavens, Maggie. You've asked me that at least a dozen times. Hurry up now, for goodness sake.
Don't shout, Jim. Have you turned out the pilot light under the water heater?
Yes, I have. And I've turned off all the lights and the radio and the television. Now are you coming?
Well, that's all, I suppose. You remembered to get the reservations, didn't you?
But Maggie, I asked you to get those on the way home from the office.
Oh, Jim, so you did, but I forgot. I had my mind so full of all the other things that needed doing.
Yes, I know. Notes for the milkman, pilot lights and whatnot. We simply must leave now. If we can't get a seat, we'll have to stand.
Oh, Jim, have you locked the tool shed in the garden?
Maggie, you're starting all over again. We'll never get away. We might as well unpack and stay here.
But I'm coming, Jim. Here you are. I'm quite ready.
Well, at last.
Have you packed everything yet, Maggie?
Yes, I have.
You haven't forgotten my razor?
No, I haven't.
Have you telephoned for the taxi yet?
Yes, I have. Have you cancelled the newspaper?
Yes, I did that this morning.
You have bolted all the windows, haven't you?
Yes, of course I have. And I've turned off all the lights. Conversation 4. All about Harry Jones.
You're very late back from school, Jim. What have you been doing?
I've been talking to the headmaster about that Jones boy. He's been late every day this week, and his marks haven't improved at all. We're all very worried about him.
What did the headmaster say?
He asked me to see the boy's parents.
Harry Jones has been having a lot of trouble at home, you know. His father's been ill all this year, and they've been finding it difficult to make ends meet.
I know, Maggie, but the school is in a difficult position. Harry's been doing so badly that something must be done. For his sake.
He's been doing a newspaper round all this term to help out at home. That's why he's so late in the mornings, I expect. Mrs. Jones has been trying to find a part-time job too. I met her at the butcher's this morning, and she asked me whether I knew of anything.
Yes, I told the headmaster that the family's been going through a difficult time. He promised to talk to the education committee about it. Perhaps they can give Harry some sort of temporary grant.
I wonder, Jim. You've been looking for a part-time canteen assistant at school, haven't you? What about trying Mrs. Jones?
Mrs. Jones? Oh, that's a very good idea. I'll see the headmaster about it first thing in the morning.
And what about asking Harry to do some digging for us 2 or 3 times a week? You've been working so hard at your carpentry lately that the garden's in a shocking state.
And who's been promising to help me with it all this winter? But still, it's a good idea. We'll pay Harry ½ a crown an hour, and he can dig up the whole lot.
Fine. Come and have tea now, and afterwards we'll go and see the Joneses.
What have you been doing, Jim? I've been talking to the headmaster about Harry Jones. He's been having a lot of trouble at home. Harry has been doing very badly at school. Mrs. Jones has been trying to find a part-time job. You've been looking for a canteen assistant, haven't you? Conversation 5. The Thief.
Why have you got that worried expression on your face, Jim? You look like a cat that's been caught at the cream.
Cat? That's just it, Maggie. But I really couldn't help it. She was waiting on the doorstep when I came home and making such a row that I simply had to let her in.
Let who in? I don't know what you're talking about. Who was waiting on the doorstep?
A kitten. Quite a young one. Probably not more than 6 months old. I've put her in the cupboard now.
And what did this kitten do?
Well, as I told you, she was meowing and scratching at the door. It was obvious she wanted something to eat. So I took her into the kitchen and gave her some milk.
And did she drink it?
My goodness, you should have seen her. She was obviously having the time of her life.
I can't help feeling, Jim, that there's more to it than that. Come on, tell me. I know. She's broken the china vase Aunt Emily gave us for Christmas.
No, I'm afraid it's much worse than that, Maggie.
For goodness sake, Jim, tell me quickly.
Well, she was just lying quietly on the kitchen chair, so I left her there for a moment to go upstairs. When I came back...
Oh, Jim, I can guess.
When I came back, she was sitting on the kitchen table and calmly eating the steak you brought for dinner this evening.
What, all of it?
No, but she was certainly licking it all over when I caught her.
Jim, that was a piece of top-quality steak.
I know, Maggie. I really feel awful about it.
I wonder who that is.
Good evening, officer. What can we do for you?
Sorry to disturb you, sir, but I'm calling at all the houses in this road to see if a kitten's been found. A very valuable blue Persian, lost by a young couple over at Bankside. They used to live in this road, so there's just a chance it might have made its way back here.
Could this be the kitten? My husband found it outside the door this afternoon.
It certainly looks like it.
Well, you can take it with pleasure. It's just eaten our dinner.
Well, there's a reward of 3 guineas for the finder, so I shouldn't worry about that, Mum.
That's great. On the strength of that, we'll treat ourselves to dinner at the Crown. Come along, Maggie. Good night, officer.
She was sitting on the doorstep when I came home. She was making such a noise that I had to let her in.
Who was sitting on the doorstep?
A kitten. She was scratching at the door. I took her to the kitchen and gave her some milk. She was having the time of her life.
Come on, tell me the worst.
I left her in the kitchen for a moment. When I came back, she was sitting on the kitchen table. Conversation 6. Jim and Maggie discuss their summer holidays.
I've been thinking about the summer holidays, Jim. I should like to go somewhere really interesting this year.
Aren't we going down to Eastbourne, as usual?
Jim, if you make me go there just once more, I'll walk out on you.
Have you any better ideas, then?
I was passing by Jane's travel agency this morning, so I collected some leaflets. If you're not too busy, perhaps we can have a look at them now.
I'll look at anything. But what about the money? Even if we don't have any special expenses this term, there won't be much left over for a holiday abroad.
If only you were an engineer, Jim, instead of a teacher, we wouldn't always be worrying about money.
Ah, but if I weren't a schoolmaster, I wouldn't have such long holidays to go abroad in.
But if you were an engineer, your firm might send you abroad.
And you would have to stay at home. You wouldn't like that at all.
Well, no, I wouldn't. But look, here's an interesting one. 2 weeks in the Austrian Alps. Glorious mountain scenery and every home comfort, it says.
But it always rains in the mountains in July, Maggie. And if it rains, the whole holiday will be spoilt.
Here's a better one then. Sunshine cruise around the Balearic Islands. Only £55. If we saved a little harder, we could just manage, couldn't we?
Well, if I took on an extra evening class, we might.
And I could ask Mr. Smithers to give me some typing to take home. If we worked hard, we could earn quite enough between us, couldn't we?
Well, I suppose we could.
Oh, how lovely, Jim. Nothing to do all day except lie in the sun and get a gorgeous tan. I must ring up Jane right away and ask her to book it for us first thing tomorrow morning.
Maggie, just a minute. I'm afraid you didn't look at the leaflet very carefully. £55 special reduced off-season price, it says. I expect it'll be much more at the height of the season.
Oh, Jim, and I was so looking forward to our cruise. But suppose we saved really hard. Perhaps we could just...
No, we couldn't. It's not worth it.
But I'm not going to Eastbourne. That's final.
If it rains, the whole holiday will be spoilt.
If you make me go to Eastbourne again, I'll walk out on you. If you're not too busy, we can have a look at these leaflets.
If we saved very hard, we could go abroad for our holiday.
If you were an engineer, we wouldn't always be short of money.
If I weren't a school teacher, I wouldn't have such long holidays. Conversation 7. Robert and Jane are going to the theatre.
Oh, there you are. At last, Jane.
Hello, Robert. I'm sorry I kept you waiting. It hasn't started yet, has it?
No, but we were going to have a meal beforehand. And now it's too late for that. Where on earth have you been?
Oh, Robert, I simply must tell you about something awful that happened to me. The bus I was in ran over a woman.
Was she badly hurt?
She fainted, but I think it was mainly shock. Luckily, the driver managed to brake pretty quickly.
How did it happen?
She wasn't looking where she was going. She saw a friend, it seems, and just dashed out into the middle of the road. The bus stopped so suddenly that some of the passengers got bruised quite badly.
Were you hurt, Jane?
I just got a slight cut in one hand. It's nothing. I was sitting right in front and saw it all. She didn't look round, you know, just waved to her friend and then ran straight across the road.
How stupid.
The car just managed to avoid her, but the bus driver didn't see her until she was almost under his wheels. It's lucky she got away with no more than a few bruises and shock.
Were you asked to be a witness?
Yes, I had to make a long statement and leave my name and address with the police sergeant. Perhaps they'll ask me to appear in court.
Where did all this happen, Jane?
In Ruislip, near the station.
But what were you doing in Ruislip this evening?
It wasn't this evening. It was yesterday. I went to see my cousin there on her birthday.
Yesterday? All this happened yesterday? Then why are you so late now?
But I'm not so late, am I? Only about 10 minutes.
10 minutes? More like half an hour. And I was just beginning to feel sorry for you. Come along now, or there'll be another accident. A serious one this time.
I'm sorry I kept you waiting. The bus I was in ran over a woman.
How did it happen?
She wasn't looking where she was going. She dashed out into the middle of the road.
Was she badly hurt?
No, she wasn't. She got away with a few bruises.
Were you asked to be a witness?
Yes, I was. I had to leave my name and address with the police sergeant.
Conversation 8. At the police station. Please, tell us exactly what happened.
Well, you see, I was driving along the high street at a normal speed, about 20 miles an hour it was, when suddenly I saw this woman appear in front of me, in the middle of the road.
Didn't you see her start to cross over?
No, and in any case, there was a zebra crossing just a few yards along, and I was keeping my eye on that. I saw her quite suddenly, and heard a scream at the same time.
When did you start to brake?
Well, it all seemed to happen at once. I suppose I must have braked as soon as I touched her, or perhaps even a split second earlier.
It was lucky she was thrown clear, or you couldn't have avoided running over her.
Now, miss, perhaps you'll tell us exactly what you saw. Where were you sitting?
I was sitting by the right-hand window, just behind the driver. I happened to be watching the other side of the road, because we were just passing a cinema, and I wanted to see what was on.
Where was the woman then?
I noticed her standing on the pavement, and then I saw her start to run across the road. She was waving to someone on the other side.
Did she look round at all?
No, I'm quite sure of that. She simply didn't pay any attention to the traffic. I saw a car driver lean out and shout at her, but she didn't notice.
Did you actually see the bus hit her?
No, she was hidden from view by that time. In any case, it all happened so quickly, but I'm almost sure I felt the bus brake before I heard her scream.
I don't see how I could have done anything about it, Sergeant. She just didn't look where she was going.
I'm sure it wasn't your fault. It was lucky for her she didn't end up under your wheels.
Thanks for your support, miss. Will that be all, Sergeant? I'm in rather a hurry to get back to the depot.
I'll just have your statements typed out so that you can sign them. That won't take more than 10 minutes. Of course, you may have to appear in court, but we'll get in touch with you about that later. Didn't you see her start to cross over?
I saw this woman start to run across. I saw a car driver lean out and shout at her.
Did you actually see the bus hit her?
No, I felt the bus brake suddenly. Then I heard her scream.
Conversation 9. After the theatre.
Well, how did you enjoy the play, Jane?
Oh, enormously. I thought the production was really brilliant, and so was the acting.
If Nielsen hadn't been ill, it would have been even better. They say he's wonderful in the part of the inspector.
But his understudy was very good too, particularly in the last act. Of course, the plot was rather absurd.
It usually is in detective plays.
Take the wife, for instance. She didn't behave like a normal human being at all. If she had only owned up to her husband, he would have settled the whole business in no time.
But she was supposed to be a dumb blonde. And if she hadn't been, there wouldn't have been a plot, would there?
And you know, there wouldn't have been a second murder if the inspector hadn't told everybody about his plans.
But then the audience would have had to go home at the end of the first act.
Then take that episode with the revolver. If he'd had any sense, he would have told his wife about the gun instead of trying to hide it.
It's a pity you didn't write the play, Jane. If you had, you would have made a much better job of it. The wife would have confessed to her husband, he would have told the inspector, and there wouldn't have been any corpses. A much better play altogether. Not a thriller, of course.
Stop making fun of me, Robert. I've always been very interested in the theatre. My mother was an actress, you know. If she hadn't given up the stage when she got married, she would have become famous.
And if you hadn't taken up shorthand and typing, you would have become a great dramatist, I suppose.
Well, as a matter of fact, a sketch I wrote has been performed by our local dramatic society, and I'm working on another right now for our anniversary celebrations.
Really, Jane? You must show it to me.
Not until it's ready. I might send you a ticket for the opening, but only if you behave.
I'll be very good from now on.
If Nielsen hadn't been ill, the acting would have been better.
If the wife had owned up to her husband, he would have settled the whole business.
Then there wouldn't have been a plot.
If the inspector hadn't told everybody about his plans, there wouldn't have been a second murder. If the husband had had any sense, he would have trusted his wife a bit more.
If you had written the play, Jane, you would have made a much better job of it. Conversation 10.
The anniversary present.
How are you getting on with that digging, Harry?
I've done about half, Mrs. Brown.
Well, I'd like you to stop for a moment and come over here. There's something I want you to help me with.
What do you want me to do, Mrs. Brown?
I've decided to get rid of these ugly rhododendrons, and I'd like you to help me dig them out.
Rhododendron roots are awfully tough. Shouldn't we wait for Mr. Brown to come home? I could do the job with him.
But he mustn't know about it. It's to be a surprise. By the time he comes home, I want us to have dug up all the bushes and planted something else in their place.
What are you going to put in then?
I asked Mrs. Eccles next door to let me have some cuttings from her roses.
Will you get them to grow in this heavy soil?
Oh, I expect so. The nursery advised me to try lilies, but I've always wanted roses in my garden.
Maggie! Are you out in the garden?
Yes. Just coming, darling. I'll have to go in now, but it won't take you much longer to finish the job, will it? I'll come out and plant the rose cuttings later, after tea.
Has Harry been working in the garden, Maggie? I hope you told him not to water the cucumbers again.
Yes, I did. I've been helping Harry, and we've got a surprise for you.
Well, there's a coincidence, because I've got a surprise for you too. A first anniversary present for our house.
How lovely, Jim. I didn't expect you to remember. What is it?
Well, you've asked me several times to do something about that rhododendron hedge at the bottom of the garden. So today I called at the nursery and bought these.
6 more rhododendron plants.
Yes, it'll look much better when there are more bushes down there, don't you think? Not so straggly. Now, what about your surprise, Maggie?
I think it had better wait till after tea. Yes, Jim, it had definitely better wait till after tea.
I'd like you to stop for a moment, Harry. I want you to help me with something.
What do you want me to do, Mrs. Brown?
I'd like you to help me dig out these rhododendrons.
What are you going to plant in their place?
I asked Mr. Eccles to let me have some rose cuttings.
Will you get them to grow in this soil?
Oh, I expect so.
Maggie, did you tell Harry not to water the cucumbers?